No.
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 Yes.
I've hit the buttons. We're live on the YouTube.
All right. Welcome everybody to House Energy and Digital Infrastructure. It is Wednesday, May 21, and we are continuing to learn about Rygate, the Rygate power plant, and their request for a one-year extension on their efficiency upgrades. So we'll just quickly introduce ourselves and then turn it over to you. I'm Representative Kathleen James from Bennington 4.
Michael Southworth, Caledonia 2.
Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Dara Torrey, Washington 2.
Graham Pluckner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
Laura Sibilia, Wyndham 2.
I'm Scott Campbell, representative from St. Johnsbury, on the screen behind your shoulder.
I can see you in the reflection.
Yep. And our committee assistant is joining us remotely today as well. So for the record, over to you. Thank you for joining us.
Morning. I'm Brett Long. I'm the interim commissioner of the Department of Economic Development. We've been involved kind of tangentially in the project for a while. We were originally involved in the study that was undertaken to look at the alternatives, out of which came the original legislation for supporting the Rygate plant. My expertise here is quite limited, really, to the economic impacts of the plant. We're certainly attuned to the fact that it provides both direct and indirect economic activity for the area. Haven't checked lately, but there used to be about 20 people deployed there. And then the largest impact of the plant is, as I understand that, on the logging. And that community has come out in support of continuing the amendment for the plant. We took a lot of testimony, did a lot of work a few years ago when we did the report. And again, it's obviously not my area of expertise, but it was clear that being able to have a source for the low grade wood was really important to being able to support that logging community in that area. So, in summary, we would support the amendments, especially giving these new owners the ability to be able to make these upgrades and to hopefully find somebody as a user to be waste.
Questions?
Let's say the new owners were here and updated us on their use for the excess heat. And their plan was to use it to dry the fuel going in to the one with more efficient.
Yep.
That's the plan to get the efficiency increase.
Gotcha.
Rep Campbell, anything from online?
Oh golly, so I'm just scanning the report from a couple of years ago. Have you, Mr. Long, have you had a chance to review that pretty closely? Any sort of major points that you could point to in this?
Is it posted on our website, Jack, or what's the name of the report?
Yeah.
It's called the Rygate Power Station Closure Contingency Scenario and Remediation Report from March 8th, 2022.
Okay.
I posted quite a few reports that Ellen sent along.
Yeah, and I think it was in those links. Let's just see if we can take a quick peek at that since we have you here. Jack, is it under reports and resources, or is it on the, do we have a folder going? I've been looking at everything in my email, so I'm probably.
It's there's two ways to find it. Yesterday's testimony,
okay,
under your name, Chair James, and then also you can go to the bill folder 319. And it is in the let me double check the witness document subfolder.
Great. All right, so here we go. Briargate Power Station closure contingency scenario and remediation report from 2022. Okay.
So I don't know. I mean, I guess one of the things that was a concern to me was the economic impact on the forest industry if we closed the plant and there was no outlet for those products. We heard a lot of testimony in the last couple of days about this, and actually pretty compelling testimony that according to loggers and sort of lobbyists and representatives of loggers, um, they feel that it would almost make logging not economically viable if they can't also basically get rid of the tops, get rid of the low grade wood that is sort of collateral to taking out saw logs and veneer logs. So is that consistent with your understanding, Commissioner? Or
It is. That was one of the principal outcomes of putting the report together and doing the testimony a few years ago, was that that's an important source of revenue to make the business work for them, is having an outlet for that low grade material.
right?
And another thing I remember that we talked about yesterday was alternate or developing markets for that low grade wood that are not really viable yet in Vermont or across the region. I think we heard yesterday, or maybe they're starting to get underway in Maine, but that they aren't viable here yet. And I was interested in the yet as we start to think about not as we start to, but as we think about the future of burning of biomass and wanting to find, I in particular, I think, or maybe other folks would be interested in making sure that down the road, we're looking at another way to use that wood instead of burning it.
Right.
All right.
Is that something that the department is looking at?
Actually, we usually focus, or have historically focused, on the high grade material. We've spent a lot of time working with people who are trying to establish plants to do mass timber, which is essentially laminated material for use in replacing steel in buildings. And quite a few calls and meetings with folks over the years investigating that. It's been relatively popular in the Northwest, but hasn't seen adoption here. And part of it is making sure that people who are designing the buildings are able to understand it, to be able to incorporate it into design. We got a lot of people who understand how to use steel. Converting them to understanding how to use mass timber is a bit of a job.
That's interesting you mentioned that, because the thought of mass timber flitted across my mind yesterday, just because I read a couple interesting articles on it. But did you say that uses like the high grade?
Yes.
That doesn't use the low grade wood.
Right. Now, there are obviously chip products that use low grade wood, but I couldn't say for sure. It really would be a question for Forest Parks and Recreation about the economics of being able to use that, how far away plants are. It's expensive to truck low grade heavy material.
Okay. And so as far as your, I know we're trying to be very thorough in our testimony, but as far as your department is concerned, that this report was your last requested word on the subject. And
yep, that's right.
Rep. Sebelia?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying to open up the report. Oh, there they are. I don't recall, did we assess the value of having baseload power to the state there in your report as well?
Again, that was work that was done by the Public Service Department, as I recall. So, not our work product.
Okay. So we'll hear more about that from Jay probably. Great.
Tomorrow. All right, additional questions? Rep. Campbell.
Sure. I guess I'm, and the chair got into this, but I'm really interested in fostering more usage of our forest products in state, or at least in the region. On this side of the state anyway, on Route 90, Interstate 91, you see logging trucks heading north, continuously, bringing logs from our forest to Canada for manufacturing, for developing into lumber or whatever they're doing with it, and then that lumber comes back to the United States and gets used here. And I would love to see us having that capacity, if not in Vermont, in the region, so that we would see that value added to our economy instead of to Canada's. Not that I dislike Canada. I just think that we should take advantage of what we've got here. And I also
Yeah.
know somebody mentioned yesterday there's a plant in Maine that makes insulation out of wood fiber. They use, I guess, the sawdust from sawmills for that. Probably a large volume of sawdust would be required for that. But again, using, and also there's oriented strand board, particle board. There's all kinds of products that could be made with. This probably could be made with low grade wood as well as high grade wood that would more effectively lock up the carbon in wood fiber for as long as the material is in a building, which could be 100 years or more. So anyway, developing that capacity in state or in the region seems like a really important thing, and I would love to know that our Department of Economic Development was working on that.
Yeah, and actually, it's even more complicated recently because we do have that problem where logs are going to Canada, potentially attracting a tariff, being built and imported back and attracting another tariff. So it's a big concern with respect to the home building industry in particular.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I am curious about the whole, I guess, arc of this conversation and the timeline, because one thing I haven't, really expressed yet is that I support, I support this language, the 1 year extension, but it's also true, to borrow a phrase from Rep. Kleppner, and it is also true that Reigate has come back several times now asking for extensions, and so I would feel very differently, I think, about a similar request a year from now. So I'm just curious to know about the long arc of
In terms of,
I don't know, just trying to figure out how we can support. I think that supporting the forest economy and supporting our loggers is really, really important.
Yep.
And I don't, I don't want to shut off that pipeline. I want to find a different,
right.
See if we can find alternate pipelines and not have there be an abrupt,
Yeah, and I guess to answer the other question, our efforts haven't only been limited to mass timber. Also, we've had a lot of meetings with people who are trying to use wood products in building, broadly speaking, manufactured housing, in an effort to be able to produce lower cost housing. And we've had quite a few people come through with proposals and ideas about how to do that. The difficult part is that the manufactured housing that we've heard about so far does a good job of being able to address permitting issues and timing issues and that kind of thing. But we haven't so far heard from people who have been able to say they can produce it substantially less expensive than stick-built housing. So, that's an area where we have spent a lot of time is trying to work with people. So there's an intersection of being able to use the wood products and to be able to produce more housing, hopefully less expensively.
Rep. Southworth.
Do you have a sense of confidence level on the ability of the new owners to follow through on the requirements for efficiencies versus the old owner?
Yeah, I can't really speak to the new owners. I haven't met them. I haven't had any data with respect to them. But you probably already know that the past owners had been in financial difficulty for a long time. And as a result, we met with them years ago about their ability to continue to operate. And they closed down other plants in other locations. So it seemed to be just kind of a slow decline. So I can't really comment on the new owners, but the hope would be that they're in a better position to execute than the folks before who seemed to be in a long-term downward spiral. Hopefully it wasn't realistic, but to be able to do much. Thank you.
Rep. Sabili?
So to that question, the current owners, the financier,
Right.
as a previous finding, I mean, do you have an opinion about, what we might expect in that kind of a scenario?
I really don't know because as I say, I haven't spoken with them. I don't know the plans or really their background. So I really can't comment.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Rep. Holland.
Do you have any idea of how many the old lumber mills that have been scattered around the state that have ceased operation for I'm from Rutland.
Right.
We lost something down in Clarendon. We have one in the Pittsburgh line still.
Yeah.
See what we saw, but and I also work around the state and saw lumber mills go from electricity was too high a price. They put in generation. Generation doesn't last forever. So there's replacing a generator after 5 years. So they switch back to electricity. I think they were in the Royalton area. I think they've subsequently closed, but I've been found.
Yeah. That's a much better question for forest parks. I don't track that data.
And so you don't work with businesses like that for economic development for replacement of.
If they were in a situation where they were looking for assistance, we certainly would. But we haven't had any of those requests or inquiries.
They're not generally big employers that have to have notification of closure coming to. Does your department get?
No, actually, those go to
labor.
Labor. We do coordinate with labor on those because our role in that situation is to try to help people find employment with another employer. So we do that kind of work, but they're called warrant notices actually go to the Department of Labor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate
Nice
it.
to meet you all.
Nice to meet you too.
Here's Doug Neddy's office
Great.
for your colleague.
Thank you.
Jack, we can go off live.